In his daydreams, Uruma imagines the world to be muddy, filled with moral decay and cruelty. Yet in the midst of that darkness, his family is the only light. They are the best humans, in whom he can still place trust and affection. In contrast, his 5 friends are part of the mud, reflecting the ugliness he despises. Behind his dark thoughts, his body is racked with pain. The 5 friends keep beating him, throwing him around as if he isn't a human who can feel pain. However, Uruma feels everything. One of them even pulls out a gun, pointing it as if to take his life. Terrified and resigned, he can only cry. While he is still trying to make sense of his suffering, Kyo, one of the 5 bullies, suddenly strangles him from behind. She says it is a killing technique. The 4 friends laugh at the action, praising Kyo for her cruelty. Kyo also says that if the strangulation tightens, Uruma will die. At that time, Uruma is only in the 5th grade, and from then on, he becomes their target. He is mocked, kicked, punched, thrown, strangled until his body is covered in blood. After they are done with him, they leave with a big laugh, as if they have no sin. The scarred Uruma can only walk home with fear and pain eating away at his body. He cries, remembering how his life has changed since 5th grade. They even give him the nickname Experiment Rat A. He doesn't understand why they call him that. Why they treat him like an experiment. With all the hurt and confusion, Uruma goes to the lake, trying to calm down. There, he can still smile, despite his broken heart. Soon, he sees a cute white cat. He smiles even more. He picks up the cat and takes it home. In the distance, he sees his mom and dad and shouts that he is home. His father asks why he is soaking wet. Uruma simply replies that he has been playing in the river, then rushes to his 6-year-old brother Kakeru's room. He shows him the cat he has brought. Kakeru cheers, hugging the cat with happy laughter. Seeing his brother smile, Uruma's heart calms down a little. However, Kakeru then reminds him that they can't keep the cat because mom and dad will definitely forbid it. Uruma decides to hide the cat behind the house. He whispers softly to Kakeru that the cat will be their secret. Just then, Kakeru sees the wound on Uruma's neck. With a gentle smile, Uruma says that he played wrestling at school and got choked, but he won in the end. Kakeru laughs and says that his brother is great. Uruma realizes that no one from his family should know of his suffering. The only thing that keeps him going is their smiles, no matter how much of a lie he has to create. Afterward, Uruma picks up a crab stick to give to his cat. However, when he arrives at his place, the cat is gone. Soon, 5 of his friends arrive. Q sarcastically calls him Experiment Subject A and asks him to leave. Uruma follows them helplessly. Q then says that they have left the cat in the forest. There are wild boars and foxes that could kill it. If Uruma doesn't find it soon, the cat will die. Shocked and panicked, Uruma runs into the forest, tears streaming down his face. Behind him, his 5 friends laugh, enjoying his panic and sadness. Meanwhile, Hiro asks Q the real reason she started bullying Uruma. Kyo asks if Hiro doesn't like what they're doing. Hiro shakes his head and says that they only follow her because it's fun. However, they themselves don't know the real reason. Q smiles coldly, then asks what is the most extraordinary thing they can do. Yuga answers leading the motorcycle game. Daichi says getting a gold medal. Senkuji says going out into space, while the others answer getting rich. However, Q rejects all of their answers. For her, the most extraordinary thing is to kill. Hiro is surprised to hear that answer. Q continues, saying that killing is not just taking a life, but something extraordinary. Their bullying is the beginning, starting from killing weak people like Uruma. In the forest, Uruma finally finds his cat. However, all he finds is a small body covered in blood. The cat is dead. Uruma cries, screaming in pain. They are truly cruel. Trembling, he is about to go home. However, he accidentally sees the figure of his paternal grandfather. His grandfather looks fierce, with a large cut scar from his eye to his eyebrow. He carries a rifle in his hand. Uruma is getting scared. However, in a gentle tone, his grandfather calls out to him. He is hunting and thinks Uruma has gotten lost in the forest. Without asking many questions, he takes Uruma home. Together, they walk towards home until finally, Uruma returns to his mother's arms. Uruma's grandfather lives alone, so his family keeps a close eye on his health. His mother, who sees Uruma coming home with his grandfather, is angry and immediately forbids him from approaching his grandfather. Uruma and his brother can only obey the order, even though they don't know the real reason. After going through a lot, Uruma rests in his room. He imagines the blood of the dead cat, the bitter incident he has just experienced, and all the pain that suffocates his chest. His face is now wet with tears that he can't stop. Suddenly, his brother comes into the room. Uruma quickly pulls up the blanket to cover himself so that Kakeru won't see him crying. However, Kakeru crawls into the blanket and sees Uruma's wet face. In a soft voice, Kakeru says that Uruma must always try hard for him. He tries to calm his brother down and assures him that it's okay to cry. Kakeru then hugs Uruma tightly and cries too. In an agonizing silence, they both cry together in an embrace. That day, Uruma finally gets up the courage to tell his family about the bullying he has experienced. The family tries to comfort him, but Uruma does not mention the perpetrators by name. He doesn't want a half-hearted apology. His parents act immediately, and soon Uruma moves elsewhere. A month passes since he quits his old school. In that time, there's a big change in him. His family seems more harmonious, but Uruma still harbors wounds in his heart. One day, Uruma goes out for shopping. On his way home, Daichi, Senkoji, and Yuga appear before him. They are the vile humans that he regards as the mud of this world. With a nosy face, Daichi calls out to him and says that Uruma hasn't been seen at school for a long time. Without warning, he hands over a cell phone that is already connected to Kyo's call. Reluctantly, Uruma takes the cell phone and presses it to his ear. Kyo's voice sounds cold, stating that running away in the middle of an experiment is unforgivable. She confirms that there will be an accident in Uruma's new place of residence, precisely on the mountain path that his parents often travel. Kyo and Hiro have apparently planned something terrible. They wait on the cliff, watching Uruma's parents' car as it approaches. When the time comes, a shocking thing happens. Hiro is suddenly pushed unceremoniously into the street. He is almost hit by Uruma's parents' car. The mother who is driving is shocked beyond belief and reflexively slams the steering wheel to avoid Hiro. However, the result is fatal. The car loses control and free falls into the mountain forest. Kyo approaches Hiro with a satisfied smile. The plan works. Hiro, who is injured and covered in blood, smiles like a madman. Kyo then walks towards the crashed car, finding Uruma's father and mother who are badly injured. Their faces are full of blood. Kakeru, who is sitting in the car, is silent, his eyes wide with fear. Without hesitation, Kyo opens the car door and lifts a large rock. Cruelly, she smashes Kakeru's small head until it bleeds. The child faints instantly. Kyo then lights a fire and burns the Uruma family's car with a crazed smile on her face. The Uruma family is rushed to the hospital. Through the glass, Uruma sees his father, mother, and brother with horrific burns. The doctor says that only his brother can possibly be saved, and even then, he is in a very bad condition. His entire body has to be wrapped in bandages. Uruma can only stand transfixed. His eyes widen, but his tears seem to have difficulty coming out. He remembers the past, when his brother drew him with great joy. His brother's smile and laughter that once felt so warm now turn into a painful wound. Today's reality is so cruel. A middle-aged man approaches Uruma and claims to be his father's brother. He asks if Uruma has a place to stay. If not, he can come live with him. However, Uruma firmly replies that he has a place to stay. He repeats it once more, as if to convince himself. Days pass, and now Uruma lives with his grandfather. He enters the house respectfully and thanks his grandfather for taking him in. The grandfather looks sad. He gently rubs Uruma's head and says that he is happy to receive his grandson because he has been lonely. One day, when Uruma is alone, he remembers the rifle he saw in the storeroom of his grandfather's house. With steady steps, he goes to the storeroom and starts looking for the rifle. After a while, he finds it. But it isn't just the rifle that catches his eye. He also finds an old photo of his grandfather with many people, as well as a dangerous-looking long sword. From a distance, his grandfather sees Uruma holding the rifle and immediately calls out to him. He asks Uruma to return the weapon. However, Uruma refuses. With a voice full of hatred, he declares that with this rifle, he will kill the 5 people who have destroyed his family. Grandfather, who hears those words, falls silent. His eyes widen, his lips press tightly together. He is shocked to learn that Uruma's father and mother have been killed. The grandfather suggests that Uruma report it to the police. However, Uruma insists on taking revenge himself. Grandpa sighs, then calmly says that if he were in Uruma's shoes, he wouldn't use a gun to kill. He would use a knife. With a sharp gaze, he asks if Uruma is so helpless that he has to use a shotgun. He also reminds him that with such a weapon, Uruma will probably be captured before he can carry out his revenge. Grandpa then explains the photo Uruma has seen. He says that he and the people in the photo were part of the 100th Special Forces of Kurei-san Chofu, referred to as the Kidayama Unit. They were a Japanese Secret Service unit formed during the Second World War. During his time as part of the force, his grandfather learned various killing techniques. He then looks at Uruma with a sharp and confident look in his eyes. If Uruma really wants revenge, his grandfather will train him and make sure those responsible suffer accordingly. 4 years pass. Uruma now stands in the hospital, looking at his brother who is still sleeping with a body full of burns. In his heart, he murmurs that in this muddy world, no one knows themselves anymore. The only ones he knows are his good family and 5 vile people. Between good and evil, vengeance has now taken root in him. 4 years on, Uruma enters Meiseki High School, a school that maintains the elegance of its building over time, a school known for respecting the rights of its students. Inside the classroom, the atmosphere is bustling with the chatter and jokes of the students, including Azuma, who daydreams about being the main character in a romantic story. His girlfriend, Mon, interrupts him, making Azuma upset and saying that Moni is ruining his mood. Mon asks if Azuma has a girlfriend, to which Azuma replies emphatically that he doesn't and that it's too early to think about that. 2 other female friends join their conversation. One of them asks Mon why she looks so excited, to which Mon replies that it's because Azuma said he wants a girlfriend. Azuma vehemently denies having said that. His friends conclude that Azuma doesn't need a girlfriend, which Azuma wants to deny, but the bell rings, signaling recess. Noise fills the classroom again. After the break is over, the bell rings again, signaling study time. In the middle of the teacher's explanation, Azuma daydreams, thinking about what his friends said about him not needing a girlfriend. Azuma mutters to himself that during middle school, he was too busy with extracurricular activities to ever think about such things. The teacher suddenly calls Uruma to the front to answer the questions on the blackboard. Uruma, who has fallen asleep, wakes up and tries to answer, but then tells the teacher that he can't do it. The teacher gets angry, and the students laugh quietly at Uruma. Uruma sits back down with a grim face, while Azuma continues to wonder who he really likes. After the lesson ends, the girls get back together and continue their conversation. Mun says that Azuma should choose someone who catches his attention. Azuma loudly says that no one catches his eye, but then he thinks for a moment and says that maybe Uruma. The 3 friends are surprised, and Azuma hastily explains that he means Uruma is a little attractive, not that he loves her. Now only Moni and Azuma are left. Mon confirms again by asking if Uruma is really attractive to Azuma. Mon then says that Uruma is indeed handsome, but looks thin and weak. At that moment, Uruma gets hit by Daichi, a large student, causing Uruma to fall down. Daichi says that he didn't see Uruma, but seems to knock him down on purpose, and again says that he didn't see him, as if he is bothering him. Azuma, who sees the incident, yells and tells Daichi to stop. Daichi and Senkoji then walk away from Uruma. Moni and her friends say that Daichi is very bad. They feel that they have just met Daichi, who has a bad character. Daichi gets a special karate scholarship, but they wonder why Senkoji is friends with Daichi. Mun says that it's probably because Daichi and Senkoji went to the same middle school. As Uruma walks toward the staff room, Azuma follows him from afar. Uruma picks up the heavy boxes that cover his face. Azuma calls out to Uruma and helps him, saying that they are in the same class. Uruma says that it's best if Azuma doesn't get involved with him, because Daichi could target Azuma. Arriving at the music preparation room, they are both panting. Azuma grumbles about why the teacher tells Uruma to carry the heavy boxes alone. Uruma thanks him sincerely, and Azuma tells him to stop thanking him, saying that he feels guilty for not being able to help back then, and that this is like penance since Daichi is big and scary. Uruma smiles and says that Azuma is right. Azuma asks if Uruma went to middle school with Daichi. Uruma replies that they went to elementary school together. Uruma says that Azuma is very kind, and says that he's fine, not even thinking about Daichi's ugliness. Azuma mumbles, not understanding why Uruma doesn't think about that, even though he was tortured. Azuma says that he'll report the incident to the teacher, but before he can finish speaking, Uruma says that it doesn't matter. Azuma continues his sentence, saying that if anything happens, Uruma cuts him off again, calling out to Azuma and begging him not to do it, because it would bother him more than Daichi. Azuma feels like he can't understand Uruma at all. Azuma recounts the incident to his 3 friends. He tells them how he wanted to report the incident with Uruma and Daichi to the teacher, but was strictly forbidden by Uruma, who even cried. His friends try to comfort him. Mon says that Azuma is always too kind and fair, and that it will only make matters worse, and tells him to stop doing that. Azuma replies by saying that Daichi is very strange, and Uruma is strange too, for not coming forward. Azuma suspects Uruma is afraid of Daichi if he reports. Azuma suddenly remembers Moni's words that Uruma is handsome but thin and looks weak, and he feels it is true after the events of that day. After class, the students go home, but Azuma misses the bus. He plans to walk to the station, as the next bus won't arrive for another 30 minutes. On the way, Azuma sees Uruma from behind, but does not call out to him, remembering Uruma's remark that he would be more trouble if he reported. Azuma just keeps quiet and keeps walking. Not long after, a man in a hoodie and hood catches Azuma. Azuma is terrified and thinks that the man is a pervert, and thinks of running away. He screams for help, but his mouth is immediately silenced by the man's large arm. The man warns Azuma that if he screams, he will die. The man sits on Azuma's stomach and roughly tears off Azuma's clothes. Azuma's eyes widen, and he is shocked by what he experiences. Azuma wonders if it will all be over quickly if he keeps quiet. The big man tells him to calm down. Azuma falls silent and covers his eyes with his arms, overwhelmed with fear. However, before the man can do anything, Uruma comes and kicks the man's head so hard that the man is knocked off his feet. The man tries to attack Uruma with a knife, but Uruma breaks his hand and makes the knife fall. Azuma shivers and mutters that he is very scared. Uruma tries to calm Azuma down and asks him not to tell anyone about the action, but tells him to report the man to the police. Uruma takes off his jacket and puts it on Azuma's shoulders as Azuma's clothes are torn. Azuma sits listlessly on the bus, marveling at Uruma's actions in saving him. He realizes that his assessment of Uruma being weak was wrong. He is very grateful that someone saved him. However, behind that action, in the forest, Uruma stabs the big pervert. He mutters, calling out to his grandfather silently, that he can kill. The blood on his hands is proof that his training really can kill them. Uruma feels deeply betrayed, while Azuma finally realizes the hidden truth. Full of remorse and tears, Azuma reveals that Senkuji is the brains behind all the torture that befalls him. In fact, Senkuji witnesses firsthand the heroic moments of Uruma trying to save him, and records every second of it. Senkuji laughs as if the event is just a comedy. He even admires Uruma's brave actions, thinking of them as something that makes Azuma fall in love with him, even though in the end, they fall and are trapped in the chair. Senkuji's laughter grows even louder, as if enjoying the suffering. Cynically, Senkuji looks at Uruma, wondering how Uruma moves so nimbly. However, he still looks down on Uruma, who is now bound by rope and unable to move. Uruma remains silent, contemplating the strategy his grandfather taught him. Senkuji then begins to tell him about Torinawa, an ancient killing technique used to bind criminals so they cannot escape. Of all the victims, not a single one manages to escape the rope knot unless they are willing to sever their fingers. Senkuji, who has learned and mastered this strategy, intends to use it to kill Uruma. He even prepares an explosive that will set fire to the wooden house where Uruma and Azuma are trapped. Senkuji's flat laughter can be heard again as he showers Uruma's face with unrelenting punches. He declares with dark happiness that he can finally hit the person he loves the most. That paradoxical sentence disturbs both Uruma and Azuma. Uruma cries out for Senkuji to stop, but Senkuji instead orders Azuma to be quiet, because for him, this is just the beginning. He plans to continue torturing Uruma until his death, because the suffering seen on Uruma's face gives him immense pleasure. Azuma, in desperation, throws herself in front of Senkuji and in a hopeful voice begs him to stop, reminding Senkuji that Uruma is the one she loves more than anything else. However, Uruma calms Azuma down, saying that what Senkuji is doing is just a game to him. Senkuji bursts out laughing and picks up a nail, firing it at a dead kitten. Threateningly, he aims the spike at Azuma, almost hitting her in the eye, but misses. Senkuji then explains that Azuma's expression of suffering is of no interest to him, as Azuma is not someone he cares about, unlike the cat he has just killed, which he has lovingly cared for. He considers the suffering of a loved one to be much more painful, and that is what he wants to witness. Azuma, full of anger, replies that all this happens because Senkuji doesn't love her, but Senkuji immediately rebuts, firing a nail at Azuma's face. Again, the shot misses. Senkuji continues that only when he truly loves someone can he feel immense pleasure by making that person suffer, like a child new to sex. Azuma is completely shocked, thinking Senkuji has lost his sanity. Uruma remains silent, his expression flat, but there is something he realizes in that silence. Senkuji, who is watching Uruma's face, asks what the expression means, then shoots a nail right above Uruma's foot, which instantly draws blood from the shoe. He laughs contentedly, hoping to see the expression of suffering he has been craving. However, even though shot after shot is aimed at Uruma's body, his face remains unmoved. Even as the spikes pierce his body, Uruma maintains his flat face. Seeing this, Azuma panics even more and shouts for Senkuji to stop. Senkuji feels confused, asking why Uruma doesn't show any expression, as if he is underestimating the pain he is receiving, and asks if Uruma isn't human? Uruma calmly replies that the pain has been a part of his life since 4 years ago. In fact, he has felt much worse than this. Uruma disparages the tools Senkuji uses, even mentioning that Senkuji is too weak to rely solely on such tools. He adds that if that alone has left Senkuji at the end of his rope, then there is no hope for Senkuji to even touch a corpse. Senkuji laughs, as if fully understanding, and decides to use his own hands to end Uruma's life. With enormous strength, he strangles Uruma's neck, getting stronger and stronger. Azuma panics, worried that Uruma will die. However, with an unexpected surprise, Uruma manages to release the rope binding him, then presses Senkuji's neck joint with great precision. Senkuji falls down in pain, expelling phlegm and mucus. Azuma is wide-eyed, unable to believe what is happening before her eyes. Senkuji, who is completely shocked that the impossible is now happening in front of him, looks confused. Uruma explains calmly that humans have 68 joints, and he has the ability to control those joints without having to sever fingers or break bones. He even mocks Senkuji's strangulation, which only presses on the center of the throat. Uruma teaches how to strangle perfectly, using the index finger pressing on the head veins and the middle finger pressing on the neck veins. Uruma then practices the technique on Senkuji's neck. He explains that within 8 to 14 seconds, Senkuji will pass out. Within 3 to 5 minutes, Senkuji's brain cortex will be severely injured, and within 7 to 10 minutes, his brain stem will be damaged and he will die. However, Uruma chooses not to let Senkuji just die. Senkuji is completely helpless and unconscious. Uruma gently unties the rope binding Azuma and ties Senkuji's hands with chains, hanging him in a helpless state. When Senkuji wakes up, he finds himself unable to move. His hands and feet are bound with chains. Uruma approaches, looking at Senkuji's face from a very close distance. Calmly, he waves and wishes him well. Senkuji is confused, not understanding the meaning of Uruma's words. However, Uruma continues with a sentence full of mystery, saying, "Welcome to the beginning and the end." Senkuji and Uruma are in a strange, hot room. Senkuji is bound in chains, his body hanging. He sees unfamiliar objects like a vinyl cloth, a table, a mirror, and a peeler covered in blood. Confused, he asks about what happened to him. Uruma explains that in a movie he saw, covering the floor with cloth would make it easier to clean up spurting blood. Senkuji is shocked and frightened by this explanation. Uruma then shows Senkuji the same air pistol and reminds him of their conversation about the air pistol training experiment. Uruma tells a story about himself being tied to a tree and shot repeatedly with an air pistol by Senkuji and his 4 friends. He shows his scar and explains the pain he feels from the bullet embedded in his stomach, which he had to remove, a difficult task. Uruma points the airgun at Senkuji's right eye, almost touching his eyeball, and says that it would be very painful to be shot in that area. Would it blind him or rupture his eyeball? Slowly, Uruma pulls the lever of the gun. Senkuji, terrified, claims to have no choice but to follow Kyo's orders. He feels he has been brainwashed by Kyo and trapped in that psychological game. He feels weak and regretful. Senkuji even suggests that Uruma take him to the police so he can confess everything. However, Uruma cuts him off and tells him to reveal everything in his mind. He then adds that Senkuji is sweating a lot, to which Senkuji replies by saying that the room is very hot. Uruma comments that Senkuji's nerves might be too sensitive, making the heat feel more intense. Uruma then takes a mirror and places it near Senkuji's body. Uruma recalls the words of his grandfather, who says that enemies trained in torture are not easily discouraged. They, the Kitayama Corps, have a method called peeling. Unexpectedly, Senkuji asks what Uruma is going to do with the peeling tool. Uruma replies that he has already used it. He then places a mirror in front of Senkuji's body, who is surprised to see the skin from his chest to his thighs peeled off 0.2 millimeters deep. Uruma knows that by removing a layer of skin, nerves will be exposed, and touching them even slightly will feel like being burned alive. With a blank stare, Uruma says that the anesthesia has now worn off and begins to touch Senkuji's abdominal nerves with his forefinger. Senkuji screams in pain, feeling as if he will die from the pain. He continues to apologize, saying it more than 3 times. Uruma remains flat, unconcerned with the pain Senkuji is suffering. She takes out an airgun and aims it at Senkuji's stomach. Senkuji begs for mercy, saying that even the slightest touch is very painful, let alone being shot. Without a word, Uruma fires the air pistol right into Senkuji's stomach. Senkuji vomits, and his breath catches. A few seconds later, Uruma says that all of this is Senkuji's fault. If he had rejected Q from the start, Q would have admitted it. Senkuji reminds him that Q likes to test people's limits, even telling him to torture insects, then killing them if he gets bored, before finally hurting the person he loves most, Uruma. Senkuji mentions that the death of the Uruma family is a gift, and he believes Uruma's expression at that time will be very interesting, because his sister, whom he considers like an insect, will definitely die slowly. Uruma raises the airgun once more, saying that Senkuji has finally revealed his heart. She fires the airgun at various points of Senkuji's body, blood rushing out and soaking her legs until it drips onto the floor. Senkuji's mouth fills with foam, and he passes out. Uruma comes out of the room, met by Azuma, who expresses his gratitude that Uruma is unharmed. Uruma gives Azuma a choice: keep quiet about what he has seen or choose death. With a sinister face, Uruma walks away. That night, Uruma returns to his grandfather's house and collapses in his arms. In his stupor, Uruma says that he has successfully implemented the exercises his grandfather has taught him. His grandfather then treats the nail wounds on Uruma's body. The next day, the school is abuzz with chatter from the students. Some wonder about the whereabouts of Senkuji, who hasn't shown up since last Friday. The teachers begin to look into his whereabouts, while Azuma remains silent, remembering the horrific events that shook his psychology. On the other hand, Uruma sits at the bedside of his younger brother, Kakeru, who is lying in the hospital. Kakeru is covered in burns, even half of his hair is bald, and there are many stitch marks. Uruma gently says that it will be a little warmer today and that the cherry blossoms are falling. The azaleas by the school are beautiful in bloom, and he recalls how he and Kakeru used to suck the nectar of the flowers. Uruma smiles a little, but his face turns sad again. He wonders when his sister will wake up, and if she does, would she be willing to wait for a while, since there are only 4 people left. At the police station, Patrol Officer Uta Asako looks cheerful as she searches for someone named Anzai in the crime division room. She greets Anzai with a bit of scorn, saying that Uta must be unlucky to work with someone as strange as Anzai. Uta inwardly feels that working with Anzai will only end up as wishful thinking, nothing more. Eventually, Uta meets Anzai, a police sergeant, who is looking for caffeine. Uta tells him about a missing person, Senkoji Katsumi, a Meiseki high school student. However, Anzai doesn't pay much attention to Uta's words. Instead, he looks at photos of the gang of bullies, including Uruma's, and realizes that Senkuji is in the same class as Uruma. Uruma sits in his chair, his mind occupied with thoughts about the situation he is currently facing. He reflects on what has happened with Senkuji, the person responsible for trapping him and Chizuru inside the dark, confined space of the warehouse. The memory of being held captive lingers in his mind, fueling the deep-seated resentment he has carried for so long. This moment, however, signifies something more than just an ordeal. It is the chance for him to settle an old grudge that has festered within him for years. He knows that what he is doing now is not just about vengeance. It is about making Senkuji pay for the suffering he inflicted upon him and his family in the past. Every action Uruma takes now is deliberate, driven by the desire to bring justice to those painful memories that have haunted him. He acknowledges that revenge alone is not enough. It must be executed with precision. As he contemplates his next move, Uruma understands that success depends on his ability to anticipate the thoughts and emotions of his target. If he fails to read Senkuji's intentions correctly, he knows he might make a mistake that could cost him everything. Determined not to let that happen, he resolves to sharpen his focus, ensuring that every step he takes is carefully planned. His goal is clear, and he refuses to let distractions or miscalculations stand in his way. Uruma begins to contemplate who will be the second target of his revenge. As his eyes settle on a photograph of Yuga, a surge of emotions wells up within him. He recalls the torment and suffering he endured in the past, all because of Yuga's relentless bullying. The pain, the humiliation, and the helplessness he once felt still linger in his heart, fueling his unyielding desire for retribution. Determined, Uruma makes his decision. Yuga will be the next to face the consequences of his past actions. He envisions the fear and despair that he wants Yuga to experience, the same anguish that once consumed him. To Uruma, this is not just about revenge, it is about justice on his own terms. He wants Yuga to truly understand the suffering he caused, to taste the bitterness of helplessness, just as he had. With his resolve growing stronger, Uruma tightens his grip on the photo. His plan is taking shape, and he knows that once he sets it in motion, there will be no turning back. In a dimly lit karaoke bar, a group of people gathers in a private room, their laughter and voices blending with the upbeat music playing in the background. The air is thick with the scent of alcohol, and empty bottles litter the tables. Some guests are lost in intimate conversations with their partners, while others enthusiastically sing along to the music, their voices rising above the chatter. The room is a mess, a reflection of the wild revelry taking place. At the center of it all sits Yuga, surrounded by a group of women who cling to him with playful affection. One of them, giggling, feeds him a bite of food, her fingers lingering near his lips. Yuga's expression is one of pure satisfaction. He basks in the pleasure of his success, reveling in the luxuries he has attained. This is the life he has built, and he enjoys every moment of it. Suddenly, the shrill ringtone of his phone cuts through the noise. He glances at the screen. It's a message from a customer. Yuga lately has been running an underground prostitution ring in the city, supplying women to clients willing to pay the right price. The message is a request. The customer wants someone delivered by 3 p.m. With a casual swipe, Yuga opens his coordination group chat to check the availability of his workers. His relaxed expression fades slightly. Everyone is already booked. He exhales sharply, leaning back against the couch as he ponders his next move. He needs to find someone new, someone he can persuade or force into filling the request. Tapping his fingers against his glass, Yuga smirks to himself. He always finds a way. Suddenly, from behind the door of the private room, Hana peers inside, her eyes fixed on Yuga. Taking a deep breath, she steps forward and speaks cautiously, her voice barely cutting through the noise of the bar. She tells Yuga that she wants to quit this job. She wants to leave everything behind, go to college, and focus on her studies. More than anything, she wants to start a new life, one that is better, one where she can be free. Yuga listens in silence, then slowly smiles. His expression is unreadable, but there's a hint of amusement in his gaze. He gestures for Hana to follow him, suggesting they talk somewhere quieter. Reluctantly, Hana nods and follows him out of the room, her heart pounding in her chest. As soon as they step away from the others, Yuga suddenly grabs Hana's wrist, pulling her close. Shocked, Hana gasps, but she forces herself to stay calm, her body tensing under his grip. Before she can say anything, Yuga leans in and kisses her. For a moment, Hana finds herself responding, unable to resist the familiar pull of his touch. But just as quickly as it began, Yuga abruptly pulls away, his expression darkening. His voice is sharp and laced with irritation as he tells Hana that she cannot quit now. Not when she still owes him. Not when her leaving would cost him money. His words cut through her like a blade. The illusion of warmth disappears, replaced by the cold reality of control. Yuga's grip tightens as his voice drops to a menacing whisper. He warns Hana that if she dares to act beyond his control, there will be consequences. His words are laced with a quiet threat, one that sends a chill down Hana's spine. He makes it clear that anyone who tries to leave must be stopped, no matter what. Hana forces herself to stay composed, swallowing the fear rising within her. With a steady nod, she agrees to Yuga's demands, hiding the dread creeping into her heart. She knows that resisting him now would be dangerous. Suddenly, Yuga's expression shifts. His hardened gaze softens, and he pulls Hana into a warm embrace, as if the harsh words from moments ago had never been spoken. He strokes her hair gently, his touch deceptive, comforting yet suffocating. Then, just as effortlessly, he lets her go and picks up his phone again. With a smug look, he types out a response to the waiting customer. His confidence is unwavering as he assures them that the requested worker will arrive shortly. Without hesitation, he sends Hana to the designated location, sealing her fate with a simple text message. A sly grin spreads across Yuga's face. At this moment, he feels untouchable. He holds all the power, and he knows it. Ruma sits quietly in his chair, fully focused as he searches for every piece of information he can find about Yuga. Carefully, he traces Yuga's history, from his school days to his current activities. His search reveals that Yuga has completely immersed himself in the world of prostitution and drug trafficking, sinking deeper into corruption. As he processes this information, Ruma feels no surprise. He has always suspected that Yuga would never change. The cruelty and dominance Yuga displayed in the past have only evolved into something even darker and more dangerous. There is no remorse, no redemption, only ambition driving him further into depravity. A bitter smirk forms on Aruma's lips. Time has passed, yet the man who once tormented him remains the same. But now, the roles have shifted. He is no longer the helpless victim of the past. Now, he is the one watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. A sudden knock at the door breaks the silence. Aruma rises from his seat, his steps steady as he approaches the entrance of his grandfather's house. As he pulls the door open, his gaze meets two figures standing before him, Detective Uta and Detective Anzai. Recognition flickers in Aruma's eyes. Anzai is the same officer who handled his family's accident case 4 years ago. The older detective studies him for a moment before offering a familiar smile, expressing his happiness at seeing Uruma again after so long. There is a certain weight in Anzai's voice, as if he can still sense the emotions buried deep within Uruma. However, Anzai quickly clarifies that their visit is not about the accident from 4 years ago. Instead, they have come to ask about the recent disappearance of Senkoji. A chill spreads through Uruma's veins. His heartbeat quickens, but he forces himself to remain composed. Standing before the two officers, he fights to keep his expression unreadable, suppressing the storm brewing inside him. Uruma stares at Anzai sharply, questioning whether he's expected to give the same statement he did 4 years ago, admitting that he was merely a helpless victim of bullying. However, Anzai remains unfazed. Instead of reacting with surprise or sympathy, he observes Uruma carefully before presenting a question that strikes directly at the depths of his soul. The question lingers in Uruma's mind, sinking into the darkest corners of his thoughts. His body tenses, his fists clench, and his breathing grows heavier. Memories resurface, fueling the fire that has never truly died inside him. The weight of the moment presses down on him, and eventually, his emotions take form in words, a confession that lays bare the hatred consuming him. As soon as the words leave his lips, the room falls into an unsettling silence. Uta and Anzai exchange brief glances, unable to conceal their surprise at the intensity of Uruma's response. Anzai studies him closely, his gaze locking onto something deeper, something more than just anger. In Uruma's eyes, he sees an emotion that burns like molten lava, simmering just beneath the surface, waiting for the moment to erupt. It is raw, unrelenting, and all-consuming. At that moment, Anzai feels something indescribable. It is not just pity, but a deeper understanding of the wounds that have never healed, and the hatred that has rooted itself so deeply within Uruma's soul. Uruma's grandfather enters the room, immediately noticing the tense atmosphere as his grandson sits under the scrutiny of the two officers. His gaze hardens as he steps forward, making it clear that he disapproves of the interrogation. Without hesitation, he addresses the officers, firmly reminding them not to reopen painful wounds from a child's past. His presence shifts the dynamic in the room, and with a decisive tone, he puts an end to the conversation. The weight of his authority leaves no room for argument, and soon, the two officers have no choice but to take their leave. As they step away, Anzai casts one last glance at Uruma, waving briefly before departing. There is a hint of suspicion in his expression, a quiet sense of doubt lingering in his mind. Meanwhile, Uruma remains seated, watching them disappear with a confused gaze, uncertain about what Anzai might be thinking. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit railway bridge tunnel, Yuga, Daichi, Hiro, and Senkoji gather for a meeting alongside Kyo, the only woman among them. Kyo holds a raven in her hand, gently stroking its feathers with an eerie calmness. Her voice remains steady as she brings up the topic of Senkoji's sudden disappearance, pointing out that it has been several days since anyone last heard from him. Yuga frowns, emphasizing that among the 5 of them, it is highly unlikely for one of them to vanish without leaving any trace or message. Kyo, still composed, lays out 3 possible explanations for Senkoji's absence. The first possibility is that Senkoji is alive and capable of reaching out, but has chosen not to. The second is that he is alive but unable to contact them for some reason. And the third possibility, the most unsettling one, is that Senkoji is already dead. A tense silence falls over the group, their expressions shifting into shock. Daichi, breaking the quiet, recalls that he recently encountered Senkoji, who had mentioned something about Uruma. Hiro, processing the information, speculates that if that were the case, then Senkoji might fall under the second category, possibly a victim of Uruma's retaliation. However, Kyo merely smirks, her gaze darkening with something close to amusement. She dismisses the idea and confidently states that Senkoji belongs to the third possibility. He is dead. Without further discussion, Kyo abruptly ends the meeting and strides away from the group. As she departs, the lifeless raven slips from her hand, hitting the ground with a dull thud. A twisted smile forms on her lips as a realization dawns upon her. Uruma has returned, carrying with him a plan long set in motion, carefully crafted from the remnants of the past. Uruma arrives at Teisei Academy, the school where Yuga is enrolled. Anzai and Uta follow him, keeping a close watch to assess whether Uruma could be a suspect. Yuga has a well-known reputation at school as a womanizer, and now he continues his ways in the world of prostitution. Uruma asks several students about Yuga, and their responses are positive and respectful. Many describe Yuga as a kind and handsome student. One girl, in particular, looks sad as she talks about something related to Yuga. Feeling curious, Uruma listens as she reveals that Yuga once lost someone important to him, Karen. Karen, Yuga's girlfriend, mysteriously disappears and has never been found. Since her disappearance, Yuga rarely attends classes and avoids school. The girl recalls the last time she sees Karen. It is in their classroom, and Karen seems unusually quiet that day. When school ends, she is the last student to leave. After that, no one ever sees her again. Since then, Yuga appears troubled, weighed down by grief and depression. As Uruma processes the information, he realizes that Karen is the key to Yuga's life, perhaps even the reason he gets involved in prostitution. Meanwhile, Chizuru sits in confusion inside a bar, unsure of what kind of place this is or why she is here. She only intends to help Miki with her part-time job, but she is completely unaware that Miki works at a bar. Lowering her head, Chizuru avoids making eye contact. She feels uneasy under the lingering gazes of numerous men who watch her with strange expressions. As Chizuru sits uncomfortably, a burly man suddenly takes the seat beside her and starts making advances. She immediately feels uneasy and instinctively tries to distance herself, but the man forcefully pulls her close, wrapping an arm around her. Observing Chizuru's distress, Miki quickly steps in, confronting the man and demanding that he leave. Once the man is gone, Miki turns to Chizuru and reveals the truth. Her part-time job is actually in prostitution. Chizuru is taken aback by the unexpected confession, struggling to process the information. However, before she can react, Miki begins to cry, desperately pleading for Chizuru's help. She explains that Yuga is looking for a girl to assist him, and asks Chizuru to be that person. Although Chizuru initially wants to walk away, she hesitates after seeing the desperation in Miki's eyes. Feeling sorry for her friend, she ultimately decides to stay and offer her support, despite her own reservations. Miki hands Chizuru a revealing outfit, urging her to change. Though hesitant, Chizuru goes to the restroom and puts on the attire. She feels strange, but also notices how the clothing accentuates her figure in a way she never considered before. Suddenly, the door swings open. It's the same burly man from earlier. His eyes lock onto Chizuru, and he lunges toward her. Startled, she resists, but his sheer size and strength overpower her, causing her to stumble and fall. Panic sets in as tears well up in her eyes. She desperately wishes for Uruma to appear and save her once more. Just as the man advances, a powerful kick strikes his head, sending him crashing to the floor. Standing in the doorway is Yuga, wearing a confident smile. Without a word, he turns and walks away. Chizuru scrambles to her feet and rushes after him, but as she reaches the front of the bar, he's nowhere to be found. Confused, she asks Miki where Yuga went. Someone nearby mentions that he just left, though his destination remains unknown. Chizuru and Miki exchange puzzled glances, staring out the window, trying to guess where Yuga could have disappeared so quickly. Yuga walks down a dimly lit apartment corridor, carrying several grocery bags. Reaching a locked door, he unlocks it and steps inside. In the small, confined room, Karen sits on the floor, her ankles shackled with heavy chains. She wears nothing, her body exposed to the cold air. Tears stream down her face as she lifts her gaze toward Yuga. Weakly, she tries to move closer to him, but the restraints yank her back, causing her to collapse onto the floor. Yuga casually asks if she has eaten yet, his tone indifferent. Karen remains silent, her chest rising and falling with suppressed sobs. She knows all too well what awaits her, Yuga's relentless abuse. Helpless and trapped, she endures night after night of suffering, knowing that resisting him would only lead to something far worse. So she swallows her pain, bracing herself for yet another endless night. That night, as Yuga satisfied his twisted desires with Karen, Chizuru watched in horror from outside the room. Her heart pounded violently as she realized she had just witnessed a crime unfold before her very eyes. She hadn't intended to see something so horrifying. She had only followed Yuga because Miki had asked her to. But now, frozen in place, she felt an overwhelming sense of fear and disbelief. Yuga suddenly sensed someone watching him. His gaze snapped toward the door. Chizuru panicked. Without thinking, she turned and ran as fast as she could, desperate to escape before he could catch her. Her mind spiraled into chaos. Fear consumed her, and she had no idea what to do. The only thought that surfaced through the terror was a single name, Uruma. She had to find him. The next day, Chizuru returns to the bar and firmly announces that she wants to quit her job. She has made up her mind, she can't stay there any longer. Before she can take another step, a chilling voice speaks from behind her. Yuga is already there, standing unnervingly close. He calmly states that he wants to have a word with her. A wave of fear surges through Chizuru, but she forces herself to remain composed. She takes a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. No matter how terrified she is, she has to keep her emotions in check and handle the situation carefully. Inside a dimly lit room, Chizuru and Yuga sit facing each other, engaged in conversation. Without warning, Yuga pulls out a photo of Karen and places it in front of Chizuru. He carefully observes her reaction. The instant shock in her eyes confirms his suspicion. Chizuru was the one who saw him with Karen the night before. Yuga smiles warmly, placing a reassuring hand on Chizuru's shoulder as if everything is just a harmless game between him and Karen. But beneath his pleasant demeanor, he has already decided what comes next. A knife rests hidden in his pocket, ready to strike. He knows too well that Chizuru has pried into his personal matters, and for that, she must be silenced. Without hesitation, Yuga suddenly covers Chizuru's mouth, his grip firm and unyielding. In one swift motion, he pulls out the knife, aiming it directly at her. Uruma sits with his grandfather, both sipping their drinks at the table. His grandfather watches him closely before asking whether everything in his plan is progressing smoothly. Uruma sets his glass down, his expression unwavering. He admits that he still needs one crucial piece to completely bring Yuga down. Determination burns in his eyes as he vows to shatter Yuga into pieces, just as Yuga once destroyed his life. Meanwhile, Chizuru finds herself in a dangerous situation. She remains unable to move, trapped by Yuga's firm grip, his entire body radiating a dark desire to end her life. However, fate intervenes. Someone suddenly opens the door, calling for Chizuru to begin her first task. Yuga glares at Chizuru but releases her. His voice is low and commanding as he orders her to return after work, so he can finish what he started. Chizuru walks toward the location requested by her customer. She has been instructed to go to room 303. She cannot imagine what kind of person she is about to meet. Perhaps an obnoxious, overweight man, or someone with an unsettling obsession. Fear grips her. The thought of completing her task in this world of prostitution unsettles her deeply, but she forces herself to keep moving forward. Chizuru stands at the door of room 303, hesitating for a moment before grasping the doorknob. Slowly, she pushes the door open and glances inside. Her eyes widen in disbelief. The person sitting inside, the one who called for her, is none other than Uruma. A wave of shock washes over her. She never expected Uruma to be the one waiting. Uruma looks at Chizuru and remarks that she kept him waiting. Chizuru freezes for a moment before realizing she is standing in front of Uruma wearing revealing clothes. Embarrassment washes over her as she instinctively tries to cover herself with her bag. Uruma calmly explains that he deliberately booked her after coming across a post advertising her services. Chizuru is stunned. She had no idea such a post existed. Uruma then clarifies his real intention. He called her here to learn more about Yuga. Chizuru tells Uruma that Karen was never truly missing. She has been with Yuga in a terrible condition. Her words trigger a flood of memories in Uruma's mind, bringing back the painful past. Uruma recalls the torment he once suffered at the hands of Yuga and Daichi. He, too, was a victim of their sexual violence, an experience that left deep scars and trauma that still haunt him to this day. Uruma tells Chizuru to stay in the room and keep her distance from Yuga. Chizuru is stunned for a moment before a wave of gratitude washes over her. Uruma has always been there to save her from dire situations like this. Looking at Uruma, Chizuru confesses that she likes him. However, Uruma only acknowledges her gratitude and gently tells her that her feelings should not continue. His focus is elsewhere. There are 4 demons he must destroy. Chizuru realizes that this fight is not just Uruma's, it involves her too. Her own entanglement with Yuga makes her determined to be part of this battle. Meanwhile, long before Chizuru left for this place, Yuga had secretly placed a listening device in her bag. Now he is fully aware that Uruma is planning something. More importantly, Yuga discovers a crucial detail. Senkuji is also involved in Uruma's scheme for destruction. After Uruma finds out about Yuga, he is determined to track him down and capture him as soon as possible. For now, he leaves Azuma alone in the hotel room. Meanwhile, Yuga listens in on Azuma and Uruma's conversation through a hidden microphone in Azuma's bag. When he realizes that Uruma is set on killing him, he quickly gathers his men. He orders them to guard every entrance and keep an eye on anyone coming in. But instead of telling them that Uruma is the one coming, he simply says an enemy is on the way. The guards try to figure out who it might be, but they have no clue. Before the guards take their positions, Yuga announces that Gano will be the one to kidnap Azuma. His men are shocked to hear this, but they have no idea what he plans to do next. Despite the tense situation, Yuga underestimates Uruma, not realizing that he has been listening in on Uruma's entire conversation. He also just finds out that Kuga's information was correct. Azuma is actually friends with Uruma. This gives Yuga an opportunity to use Azuma to his advantage. Feeling confident in his preparations, he can't wait for Aruma to arrive. Elsewhere, Gano, a tall, bulky man, corners a young woman in an alley. He even knocks out her boyfriend just so he can have his way with her, but instead of being scared, the woman glares at him and spits insults, telling him to back off. Gano doesn't take it well. Without hesitation, he punches her hard enough to knock her unconscious. Not long after, Yuga calls him. He orders Gano to do whatever he wants with Azuma, except hurt her. Hearing this, Gano grins. This job is definitely in his favor. Without a second thought, he agrees and rushes to the hotel where Azuma is staying. Meanwhile, Azuma is still in room 303, growing more anxious by the second. She worries about Aruma facing Yuga, but she is also scared of being alone. Aruma had told her not to open the door for anyone, and his words keep replaying in her mind. Her palms are sweaty, and her heart is pounding. She just wants Aruma to come back soon. As she paces around the room, she suddenly hears a knock at the door. A man's voice calls out, saying he's with room service. Right away, she knows something is off. Hotel staff don't just show up unannounced. She stays quiet, hoping he'll go away. But then, the doorknob turns. Her breath catches in her throat. She freezes, hoping and praying that whoever is out there will leave. Unfortunately, her worst fear comes true. The door swings open, and a man steps inside. It's Gano, the one Yuga sent. He introduces himself as housekeeping. Azuma doesn't buy it for a second. Gano steps inside with a smug grin, casually twirling a hotel keycard between his fingers. He mentions that he has received it from Yuga, making it clear that he has every right to be there. Azuma freezes, her stomach twisting in fear as the realization sinks in. This man is one of Yuga's subordinates. Her pulse quickens, and instinctively, she takes a step back, pressing herself against the corner of the room. Gano watches her reaction with amusement, taking a slow step forward. He assures her that there is no need to be afraid, explaining that Yuga has given him permission to spend time with her that night. Azuma's breath catches in her throat as every muscle in her body tenses. She barely manages to whisper a warning for him to stay away, but the tremor in her voice betrays her fear. Gano only smirks, seemingly entertained by her response. He questions why she is acting that way and implies that they could have an enjoyable time together. However, Azuma's heart pounds in terror as she shakes her head furiously. She knows she has to escape. Without warning, she darts to the side, trying to put distance between them. But Gano is faster. He easily grabs her wrist, holding her in place. He mockingly asks where she thinks she is going. Azuma struggles, twisting her arm in a desperate attempt to break free, but his grip is too strong. Gano sighs in mock exasperation, commenting that she is making things more difficult than necessary. Azuma's mind races. She can't overpower him, so she needs another way out. Then, an idea strikes her. She suddenly stops struggling and goes completely still. Gano hesitates for a brief moment, clearly confused. That fraction of a second is all she needs. With lightning speed, she grabs the blanket from the bed and throws it over his head. Gano lets out a startled exclamation as the fabric engulfs his face, momentarily blinding him. He stumbles backward, cursing under his breath. Azuma doesn't waste a second. She spins on her heel and bolts toward the bathroom. Her heart slams against her ribcage as she dives inside and locks the door behind her. Gano yanks the blanket off and growls in frustration. His eyes scan the room, demanding to know where she has gone. Then it hits him. There is only one place left to check. His gaze snaps to the bathroom door. Azuma presses her back against the cold tiles, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She can hear his footsteps, slow, deliberate, getting closer. Her hands tremble as she covers her mouth, trying to silence her breathing. The doorknob rattles. She squeezes her eyes shut, desperately hoping that he won't get in. But with a sharp click, the lock gives way. The door swings open. Gano steps inside, his wicked grin widening as he tells her that he has found her. Azuma scrambles backward, nearly tripping over the edge of the bathtub. Gano leans against the doorframe, his eyes gleaming with amusement as he recalls an old memory. He speaks about a girl he liked back in 8th grade. She had been interested in someone else, which had angered him. He claims that, despite being able to be with her, he eventually harmed her because of his resentment. Azuma doesn't respond, too focused on finding another way out. Gano continues, remarking that Azuma reminds him of that girl. Azuma whispers a denial, but Gano insists that it is true, stating that her rejection and resistance are exactly the same. He reaches out, brushing his fingers against her cheek, making her flinch. He then makes one final attempt to seek her consent, but Azuma firmly refuses. At that moment, Gano's patience snaps. He mutters that she truly doesn't understand what is best for her. Without warning, he grabs her by the collar, his grip firm and threatening. He warns her to be careful with the way she treats him. Then, just as he lifts his fist, ready to strike, a loud crash echoes through the room. Before Gano can react, a powerful kick slams into his side, sending him stumbling backward. Azuma gasps as a figure steps into the room. A man wearing a motorcycle helmet stands before her, his stance firm and unwavering. Gano, now seething with anger, demands to know who the intruder is. The man tilts his head slightly before responding in a calm, almost amused tone, simply referring to himself as a biker man. It turns out that the man who enters the room is Uruma. On his way to Yuga's hideout, Uruma overhears Gano mention Azuma's name. Instantly, he realizes that the tall, bulky man is one of Yuga's subordinates. Uruma wants to stop Gano from getting to Azuma, but he doesn't want to act hastily. He knows he must keep his identity hidden from Gano, so he quickly searches for something to cover his face. Uruma walks around the area, hoping to find something suitable to disguise himself. After a few moments, he notices a helmet on a nearby motorcycle. An idea forms in his mind. If he wears the helmet, Gano won't be able to recognize him. He decides to take the chance and heads toward the hotel room where Azuma is. When Uruma arrives at Azuma's hotel room, he realizes that Gano has already made his way inside. Just as Gano raises his fist, aiming to strike Azuma, Uruma acts quickly. He kicks Gano hard, knocking him back just before he can land the blow. Gano, stunned, wonders why a biker man has entered the room. He is irritated and demands that Uruma leave at once, but Uruma doesn't budge. Gano tries to assert his authority, but Uruma remains calm and unfazed. At first, Azuma doesn't recognize Uruma. She's still unsure of the identity of the man with the helmet. But soon, she realizes the biker man is Uruma. Her eyes widen in realization. She feels a sense of relief, but also confusion. Why is Uruma here? As Gano continues to guess Uruma's identity, Uruma looks for an opening to fight back. He tries landing a few punches, but they don't seem to affect Gano at all. In fact, Gano is much stronger than Uruma anticipated. Uruma's efforts are in vain as Gano manages to land a punch of his own, sending Uruma crashing to the floor. Uruma is taken aback by Gano's strength. He hadn't expected the fight to be so difficult, but he doesn't give up. He tries to think of a different approach, something more effective to subdue Gano. He knows that simply trading blows isn't going to work. As he scans the room, Uruma's eyes land on a pen lying on the floor. He grabs it quickly, and with all his might thrusts it into Gano's stomach, hoping to catch him off guard. But Gano shows no sign of pain. He doesn't even flinch. Uruma's attack has no effect, and he realizes just how powerful Gano is. In response, Gano strikes again, hitting Uruma's helmet so hard that it cracks. The force of the blow rattles Uruma, and he stumbles backward, dazed. Azuma, watching the scene unfold in front of her, grows increasingly concerned for Uruma's well-being. She feels helpless, unable to intervene in the intense confrontation. Uruma's mind races as he struggles to think of a way to turn the tide of the battle. In that moment of desperation, he remembers something his grandfather once taught him. His grandfather had spoken of a martial arts technique designed to dislocate joints, a move that could potentially incapacitate an opponent. But Uruma knows that this technique is dangerous. It requires him to be extremely close to Gano, and there's no margin for error. If he misses, Gano will have the perfect opportunity to strike him down. The risks are high, but Uruma knows that it's his only chance to win. He takes a deep breath and focuses. His heart races as he anticipates Gano's next move. Gano, sensing Uruma's hesitation, steps forward, preparing to launch another attack. This is Uruma's moment. As Gano moves in, Uruma uses all his concentration and presses his fingers against one of Gano's arms, targeting a pressure point. At that exact moment, Uruma executes the technique with precision. He feels the joint dislocate, and Gano lets out a loud grunt of pain. The momentum shifts. Uruma, though exhausted, takes the upper hand. Gano, now weakened by the move, staggers back, trying to regain his balance. His arrogance falters as he realizes that Uruma has outsmarted him. Uruma, panting heavily, watches Gano closely, waiting for his next move. Azuma, witnessing this turn of events, feels a sense of relief wash over her. She knows that Uruma has just made a significant move, but she is still worried. The fight is far from over. She watches in suspense, hoping that Uruma can maintain control and finally defeat Gano. For a moment, everything falls silent. Gano stands frozen, trying to process what just happened. He attempts to move his right arm, but to his shock, it doesn't respond. At first, he assumes it's just a minor injury, but as he looks down at his arm, reality sets in. His right arm is completely broken. A wave of panic washes over him. His eyes widen in disbelief as he stares at his injured limb. He tries to clench his fist, but his fingers refuse to move. A deep, burning frustration builds inside him. And then rage takes over. Gano glares at Aruma, his face twisted with fury. He demands to know what Aruma has done to him. His voice is filled with both anger and desperation, as if shouting at Aruma will somehow undo the damage. Aruma, on the other hand, remains still. He hadn't expected the technique to work so effectively. It was a move his grandfather had taught him, a technique meant to dislocate joints by precisely targeting the right pressure points. And now, staring at Gano's limp, useless arm, Aruma finally understands the full extent of its power. For a brief second, even he is taken aback. He had executed the move perfectly, but seeing Gano's reaction makes it all feel surreal. Still, relief washes over him. He finally managed to take down Gano, someone who up until now had seemed completely unfazed by his punches. This victory wasn't just about strength, it was about skill, precision, and the ability to analyze his opponent's weaknesses. Gano, however, isn't ready to accept his defeat. He curses at Aruma, his voice filled with bitterness. He can't believe that someone like Aruma has left him in this pathetic state. He yells, demanding an explanation, but Aruma remains indifferent. Aruma doesn't waste time engaging with Gano's frustration. He simply lets out a quiet breath, thankful that he arrived in time to protect Azuma. He turns his gaze toward her, checking to see if she's okay. Azuma, still catching her breath from the overwhelming situation, looks at Aruma with gratitude in her eyes. If he had been even a minute late, she doesn't want to imagine what could have happened. Without hesitation, Aruma and Azuma quickly work together to restrain Gano. They tie his hands and feet securely, ensuring that he can't move. Then, they drag him into the bathroom, shutting the door behind them. For now, Gano is no longer a threat. Aruma wastes no time. He turns to Azuma and tells her he needs to leave. He still has to deal with Yuga. But before he goes, he asks her what she plans to do next. Azuma falls silent, deep in thought. The fear from earlier still lingers in her chest, but now there's something else, something she can't quite put into words. Instead of answering right away, she suddenly steps forward, closing the distance between them. Then, without a word, she leans in and presses her lips against his. Aruma's eyes widen in shock. He had been ready to leave, his mind focused on his next move. But this he hadn't expected. For a brief moment, time seems to stand still. After a few moments, Aruma realizes that this situation is completely unexpected. He quickly pulls away from Azuma's kiss and steps back, gently pushing her away. For some reason, his grandfather's teachings suddenly flash through his mind. It's not that he dislikes what Azuma just did, but something about it feels strange to him. Azuma immediately apologizes, realizing she acted on impulse. She looks down, feeling awkward and guilty for kissing him so suddenly, but Aruma reassures her that he is fine, just surprised and slightly unsettled. Pushing aside his confusion, Aruma refocuses on his main objective, defeating Yuga. Without wasting any more time, he turns to leave. However, before going, he tells Azuma to head straight to the police for protection. He knows his rhythm has been thrown off because of her, but ensuring her safety is still a priority. Azuma hesitates for a moment but ultimately nods. She understands that staying here is too dangerous. Following Aruma's advice, she quickly finds a nearby police station and explains the situation. Soon after, several police officers rush to the hotel. Among them are two high-ranking officials, Uta Asako and Chief Officer Anzai Zenichi. Upon arriving at the crime scene, Uta immediately assumes that Azuma is the one who managed to subdue Gano and tie him up before calling for help. However, when the officers pull Gano out of the bathroom, Anzai notices something strange. It seems impossible for someone like Azuma to have taken down a towering muscular man like Gano on her own. What's more, Anzai observes that Gano's shoulder is dislocated, a sign that a powerful and precise technique was used. Growing more curious, Uta and Anzai demand a full explanation of what happened. Azuma recounts everything, how Gano attacked her, and how she desperately tried to escape. But then, she explains that a mysterious man, a biker man, appeared out of nowhere and saved her. As soon as he ensured her safety, he left without a word. Hearing this, Uta and Anzai exchange glances. The story only makes them more intrigued. Their curiosity deepens when Gano, still in pain, mutters that he needs to find Yuga because Yuga never warned him about the biker man. The mention of Yuga instantly triggers something in Anzai's memory. His expression darkens. Without a word, he abruptly leaves, walking away from Uta, Azuma, Gano, and the other officers. He doesn't explain himself. Instead, he heads straight to an unknown location, choosing to handle this matter alone. Meanwhile, at Yuga's hideout, his men spot a suspicious figure approaching. They immediately recognize him as the enemy Yuga had warned them about. Hearing their report, Yuga's excitement grows. It has been 4 years since he last saw Uruma, and he has been eagerly waiting for this reunion. But this time, he is fully prepared. Yuga has set up multiple layers of traps, elite guards positioned at every entrance, ensuring that Uruma will have to fight his way inside. And even if Uruma somehow manages to defeat them, there are still 20 more skilled fighters waiting inside. Yuga leans back, a smirk playing on his lips. He can't wait to watch Uruma struggle against his men. This is going to be fun. Anzai walks along the busy city sidewalk, his thoughts consumed by a sense of déjà vu. The names Senkuji, Uruma, and Yuga keep echoing in his mind, stirring memories from 4 years ago. He feels as though he is reliving a past case, one that left an indelible mark on him. The familiarity unsettles him, making him question whether the events unfolding now are connected to that old investigation. As he continues walking, his pace slows. He carefully pieces together everything he knows, analyzing each detail with precision. His instincts tell him that something bigger is at play, something that may reveal the full truth of what happened years ago. The more he thinks, the stronger his sense of urgency becomes. Suddenly, he hears a commotion ahead. A crowd has gathered, murmuring amongst themselves with expressions of shock and curiosity. Anzai's eyes narrow as he approaches, his heartbeat quickening. He knows whatever has drawn their attention is significant, something that could change everything. 30 minutes earlier, Yuga stands in the dimly lit hideout, his sharp eyes scanning the faces of his men. He has spent days preparing for this moment, ensuring that every detail of his plan is executed flawlessly. With a confident smirk, he briefs them once again, reminding them of their sole objective, to crush Uruma completely. Yuga envisions the moment Uruma steps into his trap, his confidence shattering as he realizes he is hopelessly outnumbered. He can already picture the fear in Uruma's eyes, the way his body will tremble just like in the past. Yuga has never forgotten the weak, broken version of Uruma from years ago, the one who could do nothing but cry and beg for mercy. And now he is determined to reduce Uruma to that same pathetic state once more. He clenches his fists, eager for the moment when his plan will finally come to fruition. Just then, his phone vibrates. A message flashes on the screen. An unidentified individual has just entered the trap. Yuga raises an eyebrow, momentarily intrigued. Could it be Uruma? Or perhaps someone else meddling in his affairs? Regardless, it doesn't matter. He has already placed 20 of his most trusted men inside that room, each one waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Even if Uruma is as strong as he has become, there is no way he can take on 20 opponents alone. Yuga leans back, exhaling in satisfaction. If all goes well, Uruma won't just be defeated, he will be humiliated, torn apart, and left for dead. This is the moment Yuga has been waiting for. The moment he will finally reclaim the power and dominance he lost all those years ago. Yuga sits confidently, expecting news of Uruma's downfall. His plan is flawless, and he is certain that his men will easily overpower Uruma. However, his phone suddenly rings, interrupting his thoughts. As he answers, the urgency in the caller's voice immediately unsettles him. His expression shifts from smugness to confusion as he processes the alarming report. Fire spreads rapidly from the back exit, cutting off escape routes. His men, whom he had counted on to crush Uruma, have already been defeated. The entire operation is unraveling at an astonishing pace. His heart pounds as he struggles to comprehend the situation. The idea of failure never crossed his mind, yet now, everything is collapsing around him. Flames consume the area, and the realization that his plan has failed begins to sink in. For the first time in a long while, fear grips him. He remains frozen, unable to accept that the perfect trap he had set for Uruma has turned against him instead. Thick smoke suddenly billows from the direction of the kitchen, spreading rapidly through the air. Chaos erupts as someone shouts that it is a bomb. Panic surges through the crowd, and people scramble in all directions, desperate to escape. Yuga stands frozen, his mind racing. Confusion grips him. This was not part of his plan. He struggles to make sense of the situation, but before he can act, his body jerks backward as someone seizes him. Uruma stands before him, gripping him tightly. Unlike the others who flee in terror, Uruma remains calm and collected. He wears a jacket and a mask, blending into the smoke-filled surroundings. Then, without a word, he removes his mask, revealing his face to Yuga. Recognition dawns in Yuga's eyes, but before he can react, the weight of the moment settles heavily upon him. The trap he had so carefully constructed has turned against him, and now, standing face to face with Uruma, he realizes that he is the one caught in it. Yuga's mind races as he struggles to make sense of the chaos around him. He fixates on Uruma, suspicion flashing in his eyes. His thoughts spiral toward Senkuji. Has Uruma already taken him? Determination hardens Yuga's expression as he tightens his grip on the knife in his hand. Without hesitation, Yuga lunges forward, aiming the blade directly at Aruma's torso. But Aruma reacts swiftly, his body twisting just in time to evade the attack. The knife slices through empty space, narrowly missing its target. The fight continues amidst the thick, suffocating smoke that swirls around them, reducing visibility and making every movement a gamble. In the outside, Anzai observes the burning building from a distance, the glow of the flames flickering against his face. He watches as the smoke billows into the night sky, his thoughts clouded with speculation. His mind drifts to Yuga. If the building is consumed by the flames, will Yuga disappear along with it? Meanwhile, Aruma transports Yuga to an isolated location. Yuga sits restrained in a chair, his body completely exposed, stripped of any control over his situation. His wrists and ankles are tightly bound, preventing even the slightest movement. The cold air bites at his skin, amplifying his discomfort. Despite his predicament, Yuga remains defiant. His voice echoes through the dimly lit room as he hurls insults and threats at Aruma. Rage twists his expression, his eyes burning with hatred. He vows vengeance, swearing that he will make Aruma suffer for what he has done. But Aruma remains silent, his gaze unwavering as he observes the man before him. Yuga continues to hurl insults at Aruma, his voice dripping with contempt. He accuses Aruma of being a coward, claiming that only a weakling would confront him while keeping his eyes covered. His laughter is sharp and mocking, filling the darkened room with an unsettling echo. Aruma remains composed, unmoved by Yuga's words. Without a single response, he reaches forward and removes the blindfold from Yuga's eyes. The dimly lit space comes into focus, and in the center of it all, Aruma strikes a match, its small flame flickering before settling atop a lone candle. The warm glow illuminates their faces, highlighting the deep hatred simmering between them. Their gazes lock, tension thickening the air as silent rage passes between them. Yuga's lips curl into a grin, his voice dripping with malice as he speaks. He names Kyo, Hiro, and Daichi, his allies in destruction, and boasts about the devastation they will unleash. He promises that they will ruin Aruma's life far beyond the accident that took his family. A twisted sense of satisfaction washes over him as he recalls their past cruelty. With a chilling laugh, Yuga taunts Aruma further, claiming that erasing his family had been nothing short of euphoric. He describes their suffering as a source of pure joy, a form of twisted entertainment that he and his accomplices relished. His laughter grows louder, reverberating off the walls, feeding off the darkness in Aruma's eyes. Aruma reaches into his pocket with slow, deliberate movements, his fingers brushing against the cold metal of an object hidden within. As he retrieves it, the dim candlelight flickers over its surface, revealing an intricate, ancient device. It is an old European torture instrument, a relic from a time when pain was an art form. The object resembles a closed iron flower, its petals tightly pressed together, concealing the cruel mechanism within. However, when the handle is turned, the petals gradually unfurl, revealing their true, sinister purpose. Yuga's eyes narrow as he watches Aruma handle the device with eerie precision. Confusion flickers across his face as he studies the strange object, his mind racing to decipher its function. His breaths grow shallower, a creeping unease settling in his chest. He realizes that whatever Aruma has planned, it will be anything but merciful. Aruma say that usually this tool is used in the mouth to open someone's mouth when being interrogating. However, this time Aruma wanted to do an experiment so that the tool he brought was installed in Yuga's anus. Yuga was very worried and scaring. He felt extreme pain. Aruma opened the handle of the tool until blood dripped from the chair to the floor. Yuga endured the pain with all his might. He smiled forcefully and said that Aruma only able to do something this small. Aruma gave the answer that he just starting, and it is time for Yuga to go to the place to start the second round. Aruma feels a surge of disgust rising within him as he leads Yuga to the place where he once held Karen captive. To him, Yuga's act of pretending to have lost someone who was actually always under his control is utterly repulsive. Yuga has played the role of a man suffering from loss, while in reality, he is the very one who created that suffering. Aruma grows even more nauseated, not only by Yuga but also by the web of deception he has spun to mask his depravity. The rage he has long suppressed burns even stronger, fueling his determination to destroy Yuga in the same way Yuga has shattered his life. Suddenly, the door opens and Karen steps inside. Yuga immediately turns to her, his voice filled with desperation as he asks if she loves him. Karen, without hesitation, drops the plastic bag she is holding, its contents spilling onto the floor. Her eyes burn with a mix of exhaustion and resentment as she finally speaks her truth. She declares that she is done with this charade, no longer willing to live in the false reality Yuga has forced upon her. The weight of her captivity, the chains that confined her like a caged animal, have driven her to the edge. The suffocating despair of being treated as nothing more than a possession has shattered any illusion of love Yuga might have hoped for. Karen stands before Yuga, her body trembling, not with fear, but with the weight of years stolen from her. Her voice quivers as she speaks, yet there is no hesitation in her words. She tells him that her life has already been taken away. The life she once had, the days filled with laughter, the comfort of her home, the warmth of her parents' love, all of it is gone. She has lost her chance to go to school, to meet her friends, to simply exist as an ordinary girl. Every night she has endured excruciating pain, reduced to nothing more than an object for Yuga's twisted desires. The endless torment has carved deep scars into her soul, scars that time alone will never heal. But tonight, something is different. Karen's fingers tighten around the small object in her hands. It is a miniature version of the brutal device Uruma had used earlier, delicate in size but crafted with the same cruel intent. Her grip is firm, her knuckles white with tension. A slow, eerie smile creeps onto her face, one that does not belong to the frightened girl she once was. There is no fear left in her eyes, only the cold determination of someone who has nothing left to lose. The air between them grows heavy, thick with the unspoken horrors of the past. Yuga, for the first time, seems uncertain. The man who once held absolute control over her, the one who laughed at her suffering, now sits vulnerable, stripped of his power. Karen tilts her head slightly, her expression unreadable. Then, with a steady voice, she declares that the farce is over. She refuses to be his prisoner any longer. She has spent too many nights in chains, locked away like a caged animal, her body and soul crushed under the weight of his cruelty. But now, the roles have reversed, and Karen intends to make Yuga feel every ounce of the suffering he inflicted upon her. Her fingers shift slightly, ready to use the tool in her hands. She will not be his victim anymore. Tonight, she will be his nightmare. Yuga's entire body stiffens as his eyes lock onto the small, sinister device in Karen's hands. A wave of cold fear washes over him, sending shivers down his spine. Sweat beads on his forehead, dripping down his face and soaking his already trembling frame. His breaths come in short, panicked gasps as the reality of his situation fully sinks in. Karen stands before him, her expression eerily calm, yet her eyes burn with something raw and unrelenting: vengeance. She lifts the device slightly, tilting it in her fingers as if admiring the cruel craftsmanship. Then, in a voice devoid of hesitation, she tells Yuga that this will hurt more than anything he has ever experienced. Her words drip with quiet malice, each syllable slicing through the tension in the room like a blade. She explains almost methodically that she intends to place this device inside him to make him feel the same agony he forced upon her for so long. Yuga's breath catches in his throat. For the first time, he is not the one in control. Uruma stands nearby, his presence silent yet looming. He does not interfere, nor does he offer Yuga any escape from the fate that awaits him. Instead, he simply watches, his eyes fixed on Karen as she steps closer to the man who stole everything from her. There is no pity in Uruma's gaze, only the quiet acknowledgement of justice taking its course. Karen's grip tightens around the device. The tables have turned, and Yuga is about to experience the suffering he once inflicted without remorse. Karen's hands tremble as she aims the device at Yuga's most vulnerable area, her breaths uneven with a mix of fury and anticipation. Yuga's eyes widen in terror, sweat pouring down his face as he struggles against his restraints. The moment the device makes contact, he screams, his body convulsing as the chair tips over, sending him crashing to the floor. Desperate, he pleads for mercy, his voice cracking with pain. Tears stream down Karen's face as she demands to know why he locked her away, why he stole her life. Yuga, barely able to speak, mutters that he loves her, that to him, she's just a doll of flesh. Karen's fury reaches its peak. Without hesitation, she pulls the lever. The device expands, cutting deep. Yuga's scream chokes into silence as blood pools beneath him. His body trembles once more, then goes still. Karen wipes her tears, staring at the broken man before her. The revenge she longed for is complete, yet the weight of her suffering still lingers. Karen gazes at Yuga's lifeless, trembling form with a twisted smile. Her fingers tighten around the device as she slowly retrieves it, her expression empty yet resolved. A hollow laugh escapes her lips. She has finally exacted her revenge, yet the weight in her chest remains, crushing and suffocating. There is nothing left for her. No future, no dreams, no escape from the trauma that has consumed her entire being. The world outside no longer feels real. All that remains is the unbearable pain that lingers deep within her. With quiet determination, she raises the device toward herself, prepared to end it all. Aruma's eyes widen in shock, a surge of dread shooting through him. He wants to stop her, to reach out. But something in Karen's gaze tells him it is already too late. She has made her choice, and no one can pull her back from the abyss. Yuga, lying helpless on the cold floor, watches as Karen collapses before him. A flood of memories rushes through his mind, fragments of their past, untouched by the darkness that later consumed them. He remembers the first time he met Karen at school, how her warm smile and kind nature made even the evilest, dullest days seem brighter. She had always been willing to help him, joyfully assisting with schoolwork without hesitation. Her kindness, her beauty, everything about her had drawn him in. Back then, being around Karen felt like a gift, something pure and untarnished. Now that light has vanished, the warmth that once filled his world lies lifeless before him. A sharp pain pierces his chest, deeper than any physical wound. Tears stream down his face as the weight of his actions crashes down upon him. He had loved her in his own twisted way, but in the end, all he had done was destroy her. Uruma grips Yuga's head firmly, forcing him to face the bitter truth. His voice is cold, devoid of sympathy, as he tells Yuga that he can no longer lie to himself about loving Karen. Love does not coexist with cruelty, and the reality is undeniable. Yuga had done nothing but hurt Karen, twisting her life into a nightmare. Uruma's gaze darkens as he speaks, his own pain resurfacing. He reminds Yuga that a monster like him cannot possess real emotions. Just as Yuga had inflicted endless suffering upon Karen, he had once done the same to Uruma when they were younger. The past cannot be erased, and no amount of excuses can change what Yuga truly is, a demon in human skin, incapable of love, only destruction.